Welcome to Love and Relationships Podcast. So I'm Mary and Liam is here.
I'm Liam.
And we're here with two special guests, Daniel.
Hello.
And Ethan.
I'm Ethan.
Yay! We will be talking about cancel culture and offense. And shout out to Ethan's podcast. That is something new. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, so I'm starting this podcast with some friends called Glorify Him. It's coming out on Saturday, midnight, so it'd be technically like I guess Sunday in the morning, but you know how it works. But yeah, it's basically going to be about just kind of like all kinds of issues of like Christian foundations and like what we're really going to get into right away is like culture. So we're going to get like Christianity and culture and like how those things intersect.
Sounds exciting. I can't wait to listen.
Yeah, we're going to go right into like talking about mental illness, pornography, just culture,
Wow.
Christianity generally.
Oh.
There's like lots of juicy topics. But our
Nice.
first two episodes are like Christian foundations and like freedom in Christ. So look out for that, I
And
guess.
is that every week?
Yeah, we're going to be releasing every Saturday, I believe.
Okay.
Starting on the 29th at midnight.
Ooh, okay. So that's exciting. So we can put that link below that too, because that's definitely something to listen to.
Thanks so much.
Okay, guys. So I want to start off with a little bit what offends me, and so something small and silly, but like if there's someone like a stranger or like usually cashiers will call me like hun or sweetie or dear. And I feel like that if somebody, like a stranger, calls me that, I feel like I get offended. But honestly, what I do when I get offended to that, I just like don't say anything because like I don't want to offend them for like, you know what I mean? Like I'm offended from them saying that because it's like, do you know me? Why are you calling me hun? Or, why are you calling me dear, sweetie? So there's like something so small that offends me. And I feel like that we all get offended by little things. So, what offends you guys?
I was just thinking about that. To be honest, I'm actually having a hard time.
Really, have like what offends you?
Look, I'm trying to find something that's not so generic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm kind of like trying to like.
Because you can say someone cussing you out, but that's generic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nothing like too like specific, I guess. And
I'm trying to think.
I'll be honest and vulnerable. Like I'm a pretty sensitive person, but I don't know if I'd call it like offended. More like I'll easily get hurt. It's just like I don't know. Like when we talk about offended, like sometimes when I imagine, I don't know, like it's one thing to be like offended or hurt, but then it's another thing to like lash out on someone else when the other person might not even be intending it, and they actually weren't even like some people wouldn't even perceive that as bad. Like somebody could say something completely neutral. One person will perceive it as like that's terrible. The other person will be like, oh, like I don't see anything wrong with that, So it definitely, personally, I'm a sensitive person. Like I want to try and understand what the other person is saying, and like, but obviously I can mess up with that. And
I think the biggest offense that we see in our society is from like people we don't know. Because like let's say like a cashier, like there was this story of this person who got offended by I think it was like in a gas station, and he got offended that he called him the wrong pronoun. It's called pronoun? Yeah.
Pronoun?
Pronoun, yeah.
Yeah.
So he got really offended, and there was this whole thing that he got so offended that he started like destroying the place, and he's like, I'm gonna shut you guys down over...
Is that a video on the internet?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw that.
I'm
I don't think I've seen that
I'm
one,
not
actually.
giving too much detail, actually, if you notice. So yeah, and I feel like that you don't even know this person, and you got offended over like something, and I feel like with offense, it's more of an underlying issue, like from in my case, I guess it's something like a stranger. Why are you calling me hun? Why are you calling me dear? Why are you calling me sweet? Like the cashier goes, okay, honey, or okay, hun. And it's like, don't like talk to me like that.
Can I ask you something? Do you know why that offends you?
I think it's just like a stranger thing. Like if you don't know me, like if it's with my coworker and I know them, I don't get offended.
Okay.
Or if it's someone like I know, but it's like with a stranger, it's like I feel like that the way they're talking to me is like they know me, and I get offended in a way like you don't know me, So I wonder why that
I
is.
think it could be tied to like psychological boundaries that feel exposed
right.
or
Okay.
breached. When we feel like sometimes we have our own piece of territory in a spiritual sense that we like to protect. And when we feel like that's breached, we don't know how to react because we're not prepared for it. And that's why I think like a lot of the times like we have divisions over different things because based on our own understanding we have like different preferences and ideologies, but when those clash we don't know how to I guess bring the two together, and that's probably the key. But yeah, but I understand that. Like I think it's like a vulnerability thing too. Like for me it's like it doesn't like offend me, but when people call me buddy, I hate that.
Oh.
But like yeah, and I understand when people like say hun, like because it feels like it feels personal and
Right, it's
impersonal at the same
personal, yeah.
time, and it's confusing. And I think like ultimately like sometimes we just have trouble processing things that we don't understand in terms of behavior, and it kind of like sets off different mixed signals in our brain. But I don't know the psychology behind it, so I'm just guessing. But yeah.
I think.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think one key factor in people getting offended is insecurity or past trauma.
For sure.
But I would encourage anyone, well, at least with like groups of people, groups of friends or whatever, especially like church friends, church groups, is to be open about those things. That way people can understand it.
Yeah.
Like,
you just want to make sure you find like like some churches screw people over, so it's like making sure you find like
make sure you find good people. Yeah.
You find a good group, because there are good groups of people in certain churches, or not even. I don't even mean like in organizational churches. I just mean you can find Christian friends or believers. You can meet up with these people and like, good people actually following, living Christ, and actually care about you, and are not looking at judging you, and because I know a lot of Christians definitely aren't setting the right example out there. So make sure you find like actually safe environment of like belonging and care from Christians.
Yeah, and since we get to that judging part, I think the Bible, says do not judge, right? And some people might just be like, oh, do not judge, right? We're not supposed to judge anything. But I think that we all judge like in a way of like, oh, this person is quiet, so they're shy. So that's actually an assumption, and it's so the definition of judging is like where you form an opinion or conclusion about, like you decide also in court, right? Because it's judging, but you give like an opinion or a conclusion of, well, this and this and this, because this person's quiet, this person's shy. That's actually a way of judging, and sometimes there is the unrighteous judging, right, where it's not truth. But it's our truth, right? How in this world we do live in a my truth kind of mindset where oh, this person's like this, so this person's like that, or like we kind of make a conclusion of them.
Yeah, and like I feel like you said the definition was just like form an opinion or a conclusion, right? That was one of the definitions. Yeah. I feel like we all have opinions and we make conclusions about things. It's just a matter.
And I think it turns into like gossip and rumors, right?
Yeah,
and
like
your
that's
opinions,
an issue.
your opinion of them.
Yeah.
Too, in a way.
Like I think like it's not always an issue, but it's an issue when you start kind of insinuating like, how do I put it? So yeah, just like on that idea of like the definition, we're just saying judgments is like form an opinion or conclusions. Like we all have opinions, we all make conclusions, we all kind of make judgments in a sense. It's just the issue I find is like, I think this is what Jesus was actually getting at, is that kind of judgment where you're like thinking you're better than someone else, thinking you're superior, and it comes from a place of pride, it can come from insecurity, but and it can start, you can start lashing out on other people too, with these kinds of judgments. And I think especially as Christians, like we're supposed to live from a place of humility and kindness, and give people the benefit of the doubt, and be listeners before we speak, right? And so like we can like we want to be able to communicate and listen and try to really be open-minded, having our minds changed on secondary topics or certain issues, but really just want to hear people where they're coming from, and like walk in their shoes kind of thing. But yeah, we all have opinions. It's just, and I think society is trying to like crush this idea that you actually have to have. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy actually, that you have to have these opinions, and if you don't have those opinions, you get judged and you get canceled. And I think there's like a huge like hypocrisy there, because there's actually this superiority coming from people that are saying like, oh, so you don't agree on this particular issue? How could you? Let's cancel you. Let's like I can't like you. I can't associate with you. But there's no dialogue or chance to say, well, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe they have something. Maybe there's something wrong with what they're saying. Maybe there's also something wrong with what I'm saying. And like there's no like path of like moving forward, I guess.
Yeah, so like assumptions, I guess, too, right? So when we assume things that, and it doesn't mean it's true, too. So then we cancel them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Ethan, I know you go evangelizing out in the street, and that can be scary because you're meeting these new strangers, and you don't know what their past is, right, and how they will react, how they will respond to you as you evangelize, and share about the gospel, right? Because first of all, every person is individual. They might have had a bad experience of someone preaching the gospel to them. So, have you had any like people that are got very offended and aggressive, or how'd you handle that? What do you do? What do you say to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, and like I have friends who've had some like really bad experiences like trying to like evangelize like on the streets and stuff. Me, like, thankfully I've been pretty blessed of people being pretty respectful most of the time. My approach definitely probably has something to that extent, but I don't want to take like too much credit. God's definitely like blessed as well. But I find like you don't want to be like. I find that there's been times where I've been too pushy or too forceful, and especially when I was younger, and I've definitely learned from that. And you don't want to do that. Like if somebody doesn't want to talk, you just leave them alone. You have to try and figure out those social cues, because like we're trying to meet people where they're at. We're trying to like we really want to dialogue with people who actually want to have like a conversation, right? And I think that's like an important principle to kind of go by. I find that like it's really interesting though, because when I find that I think it's usually good as an evangelism principle to listen to the person first. So I think a really good thing to do is ask people questions, really listen to them, and show that you care about what they are saying.
Everybody wants to be heard in our society, right? We live in a society where everyone wants to say something, share their opinion, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So like I think starting from a place of listening and understanding, and then you share your stuff, and you try to share it. You shouldn't just share like a formula. You should be able to share in accordance to what they said, based on the audience you're speaking to, right? So yeah, that kind of thing. And I find what's something really interesting is like when you talk about sin, right? We're trying to talk.
So I guess it's a sensitive topic when you talk about like hell or sin, right? So that area you're kind of more like careful, right, to not offend, or you're kind of.
Well, okay. I think you got to be careful how you kind of maybe like go into the conversation, but I think the incredible thing about actually talking about sin is that we all are sinners and we all make mistakes, right? And if you start from a place of listening to them and showing care first, and then you get into talking about sin, then you establish that it's not that you're just a sinner, because that's a superiority thing. If I were just but if I also say like I'm a sinner too, because whenever I evangelize, I say you and me, we're both sinners. Like I always want to make sure the other person understands, like I'm not better than you. I'm not telling this to you because I'm better than you. I'm telling this to you because we both need Jesus. And I have Jesus now by His grace. It's not because I did any good things. And you can have Jesus too by His grace, because He loves you just like He loves me by His grace. That it's not about doing good things. And I was actually listening to this thing about like Jordan Peterson. And apparently he's having more success than Richard Dawkins in in talking about like gender and like identity politics and things like that. And the reason is that Jordan Peterson actually, at least somebody was speculating that the reason why is because Jordan Peterson first tries to find common ground.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of power, and not even if it's just a Christian doing it, but literally if anybody tries to find common ground with someone else, I think your chances of persuading the other person go up a lot. And I think what's incredible about Christianity is it talks about this thing called sin that we all have common ground on, and no other. I'm gonna be bold here. I'd say no other religion accounts for that like Christianity. To be honest.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to bring up how, like, the Bible, a lot of people can be offended with certain things that are written in there, right? So there's a lot of things that people can be offended. And,
Yeah, this is true. This is true. And I would say even in the church, and then I think this is a growing movement, I guess. But yeah, but I would say that a number of religions have things that maybe to the current culture might be offensive, but I do feel like Christianity gets quite a big target on its back. Obviously, seeing as they were kind of the big power over culture, especially here in the Western world, which is why people get a little a little bit sensitive about that. But I have a bit of a story, and I found it interesting, where we had, and this kind of ties into like offense and all this, because if we're honest, the Bible can be provocative. It targets sin, it targets behavior, it targets hearts, and things of that nature. We had I was at a young adults meeting a few years ago, and we had this activity on how would we address things to unbelievers, and they had a number of topics on sheets of paper that were turned face down on the floor, and then each turn or whatever, someone would pick up a paper, turn it over, and we would talk about it. And we would talk about sensitive things like where are unbelievers going, and other things. And then the abortion one got turned over, and all of a sudden it just really wasn't pretty, and people were getting really worked up, and it turned into more of a debate, where actually the theme of the night was just how do we address this to unbelievers, but it turned more to a debate and getting worked up over it, and okay. And I actually loved that night, because I think it's great to talk about these things, even if you disagree. At least we can talk about points and whatever. It was a little sad because it kind of took away from addressing how we would talk about that to unbelievers. But afterwards, we went to a McDonald's, and they were talking about it, and they were talking about how
McDonald's, that offends me.
all the oil. They were talking about it, and they're talking about how much they actually kind of resented that activity in that night, kind of deeming it as inappropriate, and it shouldn't have happened in that fashion, and it shouldn't have been in a place where it's, I guess, where they felt was more whimsical, where people were free to, just talk about things. Maybe they wanted it in a more controlled environment, but I was kind of puzzled, because they're talking about being offended and triggered and things of that nature, but I was thinking, at the end of the day, you can say that, sure, but it's like, at what point is it, can we not have a conversation, especially in a church? Because these are relevant things that should be talked about, and again, that the Bible targets sin and certain things. And it just puzzled me, and it kind of went to show that, society has grown quite sensitive, and obviously some of these things are sensitive, but are we going to push in culture that we just not confront these ideas, or are we just going to, try to embrace a certain like cultural strength, at least in the church, to confront these very challenging ideas, and because and I was expressing, well, I don't want anything to come across as taboo, and they would argue, well, it's not. It can be in a certain type of different. It could have been organized in a certain way, I guess, but whatever that means, I don't even know what that means. But the thing that puzzled me was it was a free talk about thing, just like having a conversation about things, and they didn't like that. They thought it was just inappropriate and very offensive, and I don't know. It puzzled me as, like, our young people.
Yeah.
It's starting to get easy for them to be like, no, we just can't talk about it in a free way, which is unfortunate, because I think it does help us explore ideas together, and open up and learn and see what people have to say, and I think that's healthy.
Yeah. That kind of makes me think, though, like, this idea, like, if we're trying to have a dialogue, and it's almost like Like they said something about it had to be in a certain way or some organized way, right?
like in a more controlled certain
So
environment. But what does that mean?
Yeah, and it's kind of like they're asking to be controlled their way, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
it's kind of like, okay, well, why does it have to be your way? Like, what if I'm offended by your way? Then why can't it be my way, right? And it's kind of like we could apply these double standards, go back and forth. We're not getting anywhere. I think a big problem is, like, to be honest, is like, you said we're very sensitive. I'll agree. I'm very sensitive. I grew up in this generation, but like, I think there's this idea though that like, we're kind of letting our emotions kind of get the best of us in a sense, and it's kind of like, I've kind of grown up with this idea, and I'm not even gonna like, I don't know how I got it, but this kind of idea, like, if someone says something to me and I'm hurt by it or like offended by it, I just kind of developed this idea that there might be truth to what they're saying still. Like, just because I'm offended and hurt emotionally doesn't mean there isn't truth to what they're saying. It doesn't mean I can apply that to become a better person or to like grow or to become more healthy. And when we talk about moral issues, as Christians, we do believe there are some things that are objectively right and wrong, but we also don't want to be just going out there going like, this is black and white, and be like binary thinkers, because I think a lot of the time that's when religiosity comes in, and that's what cancel culture is also doing. It's doing the same thing. It's like saying, okay, no, it's black and white. This is right. This is wrong. Mm-hmm. And then the thing is, with society's morals shift all around all the time. One today it's black and white, but then it's not black and white the next day, and people forget about it. And just, you look at through the history of morals, and it's changing. And I think it's like a lot of nuances. I think we're oversimplifying life too, and I think there needs to be a lot of like genuine dialogue that's willing to be wrong and willing to accept truth or accept truths that are like even small truths, and just like be able to have some humility and put the emotions aside to a certain degree. We still should be kind and respectful, of course. And if you're kind and respectful, people will actually listen to you better, and your arguments will actually go somewhere more. Yeah, so it's important to do that. But even if the person you're talking to, if you don't like how even if they're trying to be kind to you, they could be trying their best to be kind to you, and you don't believe they're trying to be kind. And just because you're offended by the way they're saying it, even though they're trying to be kind, I think we need to just like take off our pride and be like, okay, maybe there's something truthful here to what you're saying. Maybe there's something I can learn from this. Maybe there's something, I can try to see it from your angle. And I think that's like really important that we like kind of see things in that way.
Well, I do have to say something. So there are many churches, canceling certain messages, right? And then there are a few churches saying like, oh, there's not only one way to heaven. But here's the thing, people are trying not to offend other people or other religions, and saying that, well, I don't want to offend this person. I don't want to offend these people, this society, and saying that Jesus is the only way. But what about when it comes to offending Jesus? Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I am the only way to the Father. So if you say that he's not, then you're calling him a liar. And, we have to try not to offend God.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously the people who are not thinking about that, I mean, God doesn't really mean anything to them, right? Mm-hmm. But I would say it's all about how you communicate things. Like if you're trying to talk about a sensitive topic like sin or whatever, I think it's kind of like, as long as you come at it with humility and love, you can never go wrong. If they get offended, well, you know where you stand. Mm-hmm. You know how you presented yourself, and I think we can't always blame ourselves for that. But then again, like people are trying to, I guess, tone down what they're trying to preach. Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's on them, on how they're going to present themselves, represent God. They have to question themselves. I mean, the Bible does talk about like analyzing your own the condition of your own soul.
For
you
sure.
gotta see where you're at, and really question your principles and the things that you're trying to preach and put out there. You said something I actually really like was when we were talking about controlled, like controlling whatever's going on, and it's controlled for them. I think that's exactly what's going on, because people can argue that this type of cancel culture, that there's a type of virtue to it, which that's sort of where it stems from. There's some mild social consequences that we all agree on. Like if a guy's being creepy and he's pinching girls' butts, just on the street,
definitely an issue there.
Yeah, you'll think like, okay, that guy seems kind of scummy, and we're going to do our best to kind of stay away from that guy. And I would say that's good, because we're keeping some the ladies are being kept safe from staying away from that guy. But then when it gets to a point where it's like they're really seizing control, and it gets to a point, I kind of like to call it might be a severe term, but I call it social tyranny, where it's they're taking power away from you, where they're taking control and saying this is what's what for other people, and then it ends up, like you said, it's controlled for them. But what about the other people? But then it's people like to call it the loud minority. They're the ones that are shouting so loud and the ones causing a ruckus, making a fuss, if you will. But just other people are just kind of wrapped up in their own worlds and being complacent. But hopefully one day the world will recognize and stand up for themselves.
I kind of want to clarify, like, so you gave that example of a guy, some creepy guy pinching girls' butts, but like are you trying to still say that there's a sense of justice that should be there, but at the same time, in a sense of like accountability, but also at the same time, you feel like maybe it's getting too extreme and people are trying to control things that aren't as serious as that instance that you gave?
Yeah, because I think there's a natural understanding, which is fine. Natural understanding. We know that that's inappropriate. We know that's a violation of someone's personal boundaries. But it's kind of like we were talking earlier when the mic was off about there's this term that we heard where it's like or a catchphrase or whatever you want to call it, where emotion is a social currency these days. Where there's a little bit of nuance to that. Not everything is as severely offensive to another person. And it's not fair for other people to completely take control of the dialogue or whatever's going on in society. And I know it's really affected like comedy. Can't say certain jokes. Jerry Springfield won't tour in colleges anymore because he can't feel like he can tell the jokes freely because they're just getting offended. Which I think it really puts free expression down. People will be scared to express, and it's not free, and that sucks.
Yeah.
So like I think people hold on to maybe freedom as far as law, but are we really free ourselves? And I think we need to talk about things like that because it sucks to be so caged, let's say, in your mind or what you have to say, and I feel like that's not genuinely free.
Yeah, I heard in a video from a couple of videos, I think one was from like Ben Shapiro, another one, a YouTube channel called What Do You Meme, and they were talking about how like the polls out there are saying that people in general feel very afraid of being canceled and afraid of expressing themselves. And I remember Ben Shapiro actually saying that like that actually everybody in the political spectrum generally, except the far left, is afraid of expressing themselves, which says a lot. That even like the liberals, people on the left, are like afraid to express themselves. It's just like that far left side. And that's millions of Americans. He was speaking from, I guess, mostly American polls. And by the way, if anyone's listening to this, just because I mentioned Ben Shapiro doesn't mean I support all Ben Shapiro's views. Because that makes me, that's what happens. I'll say a name, and people are like, oh my goodness, he said that name. He referenced something from there. Therefore, he believes in everything that person believes in. And that's a big problem, too, with like cancel culture and like assumptions, right? You're judging. Like, somebody could listen to this and judge me so far. Unless I clarified right now. They could be like, like I could just be citing Ben Shapiro for a statistic. Maybe I don't even agree with anything he says, right? I do agree with some of the things he says, but I don't even listen to him that much. But like I'm just kind of putting that out there as like part of the dialogue too. But like,
or this is a purely political attack when it's just talking about a principle or a theme.
Yeah. We could be talking about principles more than politics. Yeah, like I'm not even a political guy. Like at this point.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people can't offend. There's like the whites and the blacks, the different types of culture, different religions, different races, different the way people are raised, in a different country, which is totally different from another country. The language, a language barrier, that could be offensive when, someone doesn't know proper English, and they might say the wrong word, right? And you can get offended, right? Poor and rich. Poor people might get offended by the rich people. Rich people might get offended by the poor people begging for money. So there's all kinds of offense that are out there.
That's why I think it's, we're Christians. The Bible does talk about don't take things too to heart, which I think is an important principle to live by, because you can't always control how people are going to communicate or react to something because it's not the same. So, for example, in the Philippines, they'll joke about something that we Westerners would probably find offensive, and I understand it because we live here. But they'll be like, "Oh my God, you got so fat!" But to them, they just joke around about that, you know. But you know, if we try to live by a principle, I mean, again, we're Christians here, so we would love to try to strive to be like Christ and the principles that God provides for us in the Bible, about doing your best to not take it to heart, because they just might not mean it in a bad way. Like maybe they're just trying to joke with you or ease the tension of meeting a new person or something.
That makes me think about how like so like as a Christian, my responsibility should be, well, like I should probably like taking on this idea of humility and love and empathy. When somebody says something that kind of offends me, I should try to like lower myself and try to see where they're coming from. But then also I should also, people might not like this, but the higher Christian standard would be, I'm going to try and communicate to them where they're at. I'm not like, even if they get offended by what I say, that there has to be a lot of wisdom with this. It depends on the circumstance.
Try to walk in their shoes, like have empathy.
Well, it depends on the circumstance. So I might say something that offends somebody, but it actually might be a good thing for me to actually try to change how I communicate it to show that I care. And I don't think it should just be, oh, they offended me, therefore I'm not going to change how I talk. I don't care if I offend them. No, it actually should be, the higher Christian ethic should be, okay, they offended me. Okay, I want to see what I can learn from what they're saying. And then I want to try and talk back to them in a way that is communicating like respect and like try to not offend them. Because we don't want to offend people unnecessarily.
Yes.
We want to come from a place of love. And so like, I think it's definitely harder to do that, but I think that's like what we should like kind of aim at, and that towards that kind of like principle.
I think okay. I was gonna say, I think communication is an important thing for people to work on. I think communicating well can be kind of the deciding factor on how things are gonna go, and I think it's something that we can, I guess, just practice doing and just being open. And now when we were just talking about cancel culture, I think just to put like the theme about this is that you know, the society, well, our Western society will try to preach tolerance in this, but really what many people are after is conformity, and they try to disguise it as tolerance. And I think we need to sniff it out and see that that's not the case for a lot of what people are trying to push. And you know, it's unfortunate, but you know, I think the more people are talking about it, and a lot of people are talking about it, and some people try to brush it under the rug and say it's not happening, but you know, we know it is. It's getting pretty obvious. So
yeah, for sure. I feel like the whole tolerance thing is like, it's like you might have a certain issue, just say abortion. I'm not saying okay, so let's say it's abortion. You say if you don't take this certain view on it, then you're an intolerant person. But you're actually being intolerant of them. So it's like you have to have, let's say you have to be pro-choice, and this is the tolerant position. So if you're pro-choice, you're tolerant. But if someone says they're pro-life, and it could go the other way. I'm not saying it can't go the other way. It could definitely go the other way. But just an example, you could say that, you could be saying to that like pro-life person, like, oh man, you're not tolerant. But the thing is, there's actually hypocrisy there, because you're actually being intolerant to their position, right? So I think there needs to be a little bit like more. You don't want to make sure we got that superiority thing. And it could go both ways. One more thing though, I think I want to say though, like, just in general, about cancel culture is just like this idea that like it's not all bad. I just think it's become a lot bad over because of how like almost like suppressed we are. We can't feel like we can express themselves. Yeah. And I feel like we're assuming and making issues that aren't there. But like, for example, like I think Harvey Weinstein, like that case, right? Yeah. Like I think that technically is like a cancel culture kind of thing. I need to research it more, but from what I'm aware, like he totally did, like, he was like a sex offender. He totally did wrong things. He ended up, but that came from people, like, I think social media, people coming together and saying, this is an injustice. We can't let this guy get away from this just because he has a high status. And we as Christians are supposed to promote justice. We are supposed to promote grace and forgiveness a lot. And that I think grace and forgiveness changes people. Justice doesn't actually change people really. So that's something to think about, like, going forward for all of us, but maybe a discussion for another day. But I just want to realize that I think there are instances of cancel culture where justice should happen and accountability should happen, and it can be a good thing. So I don't want to make it that black and white. Like I said earlier, it isn't just that black and white. A lot of these issues isn't that black and white, but I think generally I would say, like from what I've seen, that it's become pretty toxic overall,
Yes.
and it's become way too extreme, and I think we need to cancel some aspects of cancel culture. But it's kind of a joke there, but yeah.
Really good. We just want to wrap it up, and we just want to share like what we believe in, and you know we follow Jesus's teachings. Jesus is like our Lord, right, above us, and he said the golden rule, which is do unto others as you want to do unto you, or another way of translating is treat others the way you want to be treated. So you know, love is key. You know, loving your neighbor and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, loving your neighbor as yourself, and blessing those who curse you, and you know, just promoting a sense of love and the way you communicate to people.
Yeah, exactly.
The message we want to put out to you guys is, if someone out there offends you or does you wrong, that you pray for them and you show love to them. And these are the principles that Jesus taught us in the Bible, and do it out of a genuine heart. And you know, the Bible says that you know, if we surrender to God, He will give us a heart of flesh and not one of stone. So let that warm, fleshy heart just ooze out and love lots and lots of people. And when they do you wrong, pray for them, because the Bible says, bless those who curse you, and to love your enemies, and to love thy neighbor as yourself. So just spread the love, man.
I have one thing to add on that. It's like, yeah, like exactly what you said, spread the love. But the thing we gotta do is we gotta make sure it's genuinely flowing from the Holy Spirit, genuinely flowing from God, because we don't want to be trying to love people just for the sake of feeling good about ourselves. We want to like make sure we're depending on the Holy Spirit to actually genuinely show that love to people, and genuinely.
Yeah, and when we like
care about them.
actually pray for someone, usually if we hate them or offended, right, we just want to curse them. You know, it's hard to pray, but when we actually pray for them to bless them, and you know, it changes us too as well, and it changes them, right? So
For sure.
that's what the power of prayer. So
Yeah, it changes us too. It's really good. Yeah.
yeah. So I hope everybody enjoyed today's episode, and thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.